that while we were standing here and all of you were sitting there, it's too bad Secretary Bobby Kennedy's not here because we're all getting a lot of vitamin D today. So we'll let him know. He'd be very proud. All right, we'll take some questions from the press.
Okay. Thank you, Secretary Rollins. Mary Margaret with the Daily Wire. 2 questions, if that's okay. First of all, I'm seeing on this map that there's a lot of Chinese-owned farmland in California. Are you looking into the severity of that and what those consequences are? And then number 2, the president has expressed concerns about how mass deportations would affect the farm industry. Do you have concerns on this front? And are you hearing about some of these top conservatives saying that there's a push for amnesty for this workforce?
Well, thank you for those questions. The first thing I'll say on California, and I'd love for anyone else to join me if they have thoughts on that, is this, that a lot of people said, well, look at the red states are the ones leading the way. The red states are the ones that are banning the Chinese-owned farmland, and this is true. But I have to believe that even the Democrat governors and even the blue states realize what a massive threat this is to national security and how important it is. So we plan to work with everyone, no matter which party, no matter which side of the aisle they're from, to ensure that the people of this country and our agriculture farmland is protected. The second question, I appreciate you bringing that up. There's been a lot of noise in the last few days and a lot of questions about where the president stands in his vision for farm labor. The first thing I'll say is the president has been unequivocal that there will be no amnesty, and I think that's very, very important. I and the rest of our cabinet certainly support that, effectuate that, and make sure that happens every single day. The second thing, to your question about mass deportations, the president and I have spoken about that once or twice, and he has always been of the mindset that at the end of the day, the promise to America to ensure that we have a 100% American workforce stands, but we must be strategic in how we are implementing the mass deportation so as not to compromise our food supply. Ultimately, the answer on this is automation, also some reform within the current governing structure. And then also, when you think about, there are 34 million able-bodied adults in our Medicaid program. There are plenty of workers in America, but we just have to make sure we're not compromising today, especially in the context of everything we're thinking about right now. So no amnesty under any circumstances. Mass deportations continue, but in a strategic and intentional way as we move our workforce toward more automation and toward a 100% American workforce. And ultimately, it's the wonderful members of Congress behind me who are taking this on the fixing the current immigration system. So thank you so much.
Madam Secretary, thank you. First of all, condolences, thoughts, and prayers to all the folks back in Texas, near and dear to your heart. A couple quick thoughts. Congratulations on the success of getting at least partially, the death tax repealed in the BBB, because, as we all know, it affects farmers disproportionately to a great extent. Congratulations on that. Also, egg prices today, just right now, hit $2.49 a dozen. A clear 55% below the failed Bidenomics egg price. And we all know it's not just about eggs, but it has become a metaphor for inflation. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Because food inflation is coming down. That's a testament to you.
Thank you.
The thought and the question follow-up is, what a great group you put together here. Wonderful, wonderful idea. Surprising it hasn't been done sooner here. So the question is, has President Trump talked to you about this group, number one? And I guess equally as important, have the Chinese government, either officially or unofficially, reached out to you about this program?
So the first thing I'll say, and I appreciate that so much. Who are you with?
It's Eric Bowling. I'm with
That's
the
right.
Bowling Show.
Eric, thank you. And with the Bowling Show, it's great to have you, and thank you for making your way. I would like to note, and it's not lost on you, Eric, but I want to make sure everyone understands, this cabinet and this administration is different. That in previous administrations, I don't know that you would ever see 4 cabinet secretaries, a counselor to the president, one of the most steadfast, loyal patriots who've stood beside him, Peter Navarro, ever come out together on a morning in 100-degree weather and talk about agriculture farmland. But we are all in this together, and the president has been resolute in ensuring that we do everything that needs to be done to protect the homeland. So I'm very, very proud of that. On the second question, I don't want to get ahead of the president, so I won't answer that. One of the chief lessons I've learned over many years is never get ahead of President Trump. But there is no doubt that he, our cabinet, our administration, our friends across the country are acutely aware of this issue and doing everything we can to solve for it. Eric, thank you for being here. Next question.
Thank you, Secretary Rollins. Jackson Richmond with the Epoch Times. Was Secretary Rubio consulted on this, given that's the national security aspect of this? And then was the CDC consulted, given the bioterrorism aspect of this?
Yes, all of the above were consulted. To get to this point, a little bit of sausage making for everyone. It's not just we throw an event together and here we all are. The layers and layers and layers of work to go through all of the agencies is of utmost importance. And what I have learned now in a little bit of my time in government is that often, and this is the reason you don't see the ball moving down the field very often, the amount of effort it takes to integrate and work, and the long nights and the sleepless nights, especially by our team, our incredible Chief of Staff, Kaylee Buller, is the one who's really been driving this alongside the rest of our team, is really inspiring. So yes, they've all been consulted. Everyone has been incredibly supportive to get to this point today. But what I would like to say as well, and thank you for that question, is that this is just the beginning. Today is the first step to get us to this announcement as we begin this important work. You'll be hearing a lot from us on this over the next 4 years, and some real metrics in place that we're putting, like how do we measure our success? And I think that's what makes this administration different. So thank you for being here. Love the Epoch Times. And next question.
Yes, Philip Rasher with AgriPulse. I have two questions. One, following up on the immigration question. The president has continually said that he wants to give farmers some kind of temporary pass. Could you define what he means by temporary pass? Does that mean ICE won't go onto farms for a certain period? What does he mean by that? And the second question is, what are you going to do at USDA with regard to the remaining property owned by Syngenta and Smithfield Foods, which is a large portion of this Chinese-owned land?
That's right. Well, the second question first, as we discussed earlier, and Mr. Navarro, again, and he and his team over at the White House, amongst many others, we are looking at every available option. There are multiples of options. You'll likely see an executive order on this very soon from the White House, and we'll be looking at multiple different authorities within the federal government to begin to claw that back. So that's what I'll say about that. Again, I think I answered the second question, where we are on farm labor, a little bit earlier, but what I will say is that Lori Chavez DeRimmer is our Secretary of Labor, and the H-2A visa program, all of the programs that inure to moving in seasonal ag workers are under Secretary Chavez DeRimmer. She has been working around the clock with her team. I think we'll probably hear a little bit more about this today, and the conversations will continue. But I can't underscore enough, there will be no amnesty. The mass deportations continue, but in a strategic way, and we move the workforce towards automation and 100% American participation, which again, with 34 million people, able-bodied adults on Medicaid, we should be able to do that fairly quickly. Thank you.
One more question.
Hi, thanks for doing this. Kate Goodell with the Washington Post. I'm wondering if you can perhaps spell out some of the specific threats that we're seeing with Chinese farmland at the moment. I also wanted to ask about the legislative efforts and what form the executive action might take and whether you have a timeline.
Well, first on American farmland, and I'd love for Peter to add to this, and if anyone else would like to as well. When you look at the chart, which is behind our, by the way, our new deputy, Secretary Stephen Vaden started yesterday from the great state of Tennessee, Governor Lee. You can see on this chart the hundreds of thousands, and by the way, this is just China-owned. This is not other countries of concern owned, such as North Korea, Russia, Iran, and others. You can see that a lot of those, the red blocks, are actual military bases. And ultimately, when we're talking about national security, that is, I think, the number one concern, certainly of this administration, is what's happening there as we're looking at the threats that this country is facing, but specifically through agriculture is really, really important. Peter, I don't know if you want to add to that.
And thanks for asking that question. If you look at the gradations of threat, that's the most obvious. I mean, how did we let that happen? How did we let that happen? And Siphius, Greek word, I think, for like doing nothing, right? But not during the Trump administration. And I can tell you, if nothing else happened today, having Brooke Rollins on that board? Give her a hand. That's a big deal. But if you look at the concept here of unrestricted warfare that I talked a little about earlier, it's not just the idea that you can surveil troop movements, flights, all the things you would worry about just from a pure national security view. But you remember when they arrested the Chinese spies on the Iowa farmland? You all remember that? I mean, that was another turning point in our awareness, where they were, so if they're owning the farmland, they have access to all of they're going to get the seeds that way too. And so ultimately, the other thing they want to do is, which is why they bought Smithfield Foods. I don't know if you know this, but China consumes 50% of the pork in the world. Did you know this? That's astonishing. I think we got the corner on Kentucky Fried Chicken, but they cornered the part. So when they acquire Smithfield's Foods and the entire pork chain, it's like that becomes a weapon in and of itself. So the more land they acquire here, the more control they have. And it's a business model. I mean, we're the United States, but they treat us like a colony. They do the same damn thing down in Zambia with tobacco. And around all of Africa, they buy land, they bring in Chinese workers to work the land, and then they ship the food back to China, and the people around starve or pay higher prices. So when you ask us, what's this about? It's about everything. Food security is national security. Thank you.
I want to make a comment, if you don't mind. So, to me, the Chinese owning land is just a small piece of the puzzle. I'm much more concerned with food supply down the road here, that right now foreign entities own about a fifth of the protein processing. Between beef and pork, JBS and Smithfield own about a fifth, maybe a fourth of the protein processing in this entire country. That's just wrong. I think beyond that, it's the intellectual property theft. It's the Chinese scientists that are in our own universities and research that are stealing intellectual property. It wasn't too long ago they were taking rice seeds from my alma mater. The Attorney General mentioned something up in Michigan. It's that constant threat. But what really keeps me awake, the real threat to me, the biggest, is bioterrorism. If you could imagine a COVID-like virus made in a laboratory in Wuhan, China, that could infect all the hogs of the world, but you had an mRNA vaccine that could protect your own hogs, what would that do to our world's food supply? That's what keeps me up, and that's why I'm a big proponent of the work being done at NBAT, the National Agro Research Defense Facility in Manhattan, Kansas as well. I think that's the biggest active threat that I see is bioterrorism.
Yeah, agreed.
I think Senator Marshall really put a nice overview on the different threats. Really, you know, American agriculture, I think, is defined as science, technology, and innovation. And all those are amazing. It defines agriculture today, but it also leads the way for agriculture over the horizon for the future. But it can be very vulnerable if we don't protect that. And in the past, we haven't provided protections for that. The science, the technology, the innovation that comes out of this great country, out of this essential industry. And I think the fact that today we're declaring that food security is national security, farm security is a part of that. I think this is a great milestone of making sure that we're protecting all of that for the future. America needs we always want America to be in the lead, no matter what we're talking about. But certainly when it comes to the thing that is probably most essential, and that is food and fiber, energy materials, building resources, all the things that come off that rural agriculture acreage, we have a duty and responsibility to make sure that those things are secure. So, Secretary, thank you for your leadership and vision on this. Much appreciated.
Timing is coming very soon. We'll continue to announce further steps to answer your final question. Listen, everyone, thank you so much for being here. It's really, really an honor to have you all here at the People's Department. Abraham Lincoln founded this department in 1862 to ensure that the American farmers and ranchers and rural prosperity